Hello everyone. I am Kimberly Kirkland with UAB Arts and Medicine, and welcome to the new year and the January edition of Virtual Mental Health Monday. Um, Virtual Mental Health Monday is a space where we talk about things that affect health and well-being through a holistic and creative lens. And it's one of our monthly programs for arts and medicine, where our mission is to enhance health and well-being, both in healthcare and community settings. And of course, that includes patients, family members, and our very important healthcare staff. If you'd like, please write in the chat your name, where you're Zooming from, and your connection to or interest in the topic, if you'd like. And note this is being recorded. So while we would love for you to join us with your camera on, you are, of course, free to keep that camera turned off. And if you have any questions for our speakers at any time, please feel free to add them into the chat, and we'll make sure we get to those during the Q&A portion towards the end. So today we're exploring strategies and creative approaches to prevent burnout in healthcare settings, with an added focus on arts and, of course, self-care and resilience building practices. Burnout among healthcare professionals is a pressing issue, and we've brought together a wonderful panel to share their expertise, insights, and actionable strategies for addressing the challenge. So we have with us today Dr. Tammy Long. She is a licensed professional counselor and the director of the UAB Employee Assistance and Counseling Center. Next, we'll have Dr. Diane Tucker. She's a clinical psychologist, professor emerita, and founding member of the UAB Center for Palliative and Supportive Care. And of course, Selam Green, a longtime beloved artist in residence with our team. She is also, of course, an author, a poet, and the inaugural poet laureate for the city of Birmingham. So we're delighted to have all of these wonderful people with us today. And at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Tammy Long.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good. I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here today and really appreciate the invitation, Kimberly. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint, and I am going to be talking about caregiver burnout in healthcare professionals. So before we begin, I think it's really important that we assess where we are today. As healthcare professionals, I've included some questions here on the slides here. And my first question to you is, are you taking care of you? So we're beginning the new year 2025, and if you have a piece of paper there, just think about these questions. The first question is, how do you unwind at the end of the day? Are you taking some time to breathe? Are you taking some time to take care of you? Are you managing your stress well? Are you setting good boundaries? Think about your work life and think about your home life. How would you rate those areas in your life? Are you doing extremely well in one area versus the other? Do you feel overwhelmed in one area versus the other? And just really think about, how do your current habits make you feel? So let's talk about caregiver burnout. So caregiver burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that can occur when someone is caring for another person. And as healthcare workers, you're always taking care of others. And so this can look like chronic fatigue. It can look like reduced empathy. It could look like anxiety, depression. You may feel a lack of motivation for what you're doing. You may find yourself having problems going to sleep. You may find yourself having struggles with your appetite. And at the end of the day, you just don't feel well. And for a lot of people, this feels kind of heavy when you get to burnout. So, of course, as a healthcare professional, there are some environmental factors that contribute to this. As healthcare professionals, many of you work 12-hour shifts. Some of you have very high workloads. Some of your patients are very demanding. Sometimes resources are lacking, and we're human. You have your personal challenges at home that are outside of the workplace, right? And then sometimes there's staffing shortages that contribute to that feeling of being overwhelmed. We know that burnout in healthcare professionals sometimes results in a reduced quality of care. So going back to those first questions, there was a purpose in those questions. I wanted you to know or to think about, how are you showing up? Are you taking care of you? When things are just overwhelming for you and you show up at work, that means chances are you're not satisfied with your work. You're not satisfied with what you're doing, which can lead to increased medical errors. And not only are, your relationships strained at work, potentially, it actually can impact those relationships with friends and family because, again, you're not feeling your best. And we also know that if you're overwhelmed and if you are chronically stressed, overwhelmed, and exhausted, this can lead to health conditions and mental health concerns. So, how do you address burnout? So, I want you to know the signs and symptoms. So, hopefully, several of you took note of what those signs and symptoms were today. And then I'm going to challenge you to build and implement a self-care plan. And so when I talk about self-care plans, so first, self-care comes before burnout. I'm going to say that again. Self-care comes before burnout. And so you have to be intentional about that plan. And for a lot of people, that's about self-care one-on-one, just making sure you're eating the right things, making sure that you're drinking water, making sure that you are engaging in physical activity. Sometimes you also have to know when to draw boundaries. Healthy boundary setting is a necessity and practicing self-care, especially within the health and human services field. I know that sometimes as natural caregivers, it's hard to say no. And it can be difficult to say no, especially when you enjoy giving and giving and giving. But at some point, again, you've got to reassess and assess to make sure that you're in the place to be able to give and continue giving. And then when you find yourself not really feeling connected to your work, you've got to dig in and find a way to reconnect to your work. And that could look like maybe taking a moment to invest in some continuing education. It could be taking a moment to connect with a friend who's in the same profession and just connecting with them on some of their strategies to stay connected to the important work that you do. Make sure that you are prioritizing moments of joy. Think about what brings you happiness and make sure that you are engaging in those activities. Make sure you're engaging with friends, family. And then also, if you're in a work environment that sometimes is not conducive to your emotional well-being, sometimes it's about going to your supervisor and advocating for those small changes within the work environment. And then when all else fails and you have not been able to reboot and refresh and practice that self-care routine consistently, sometimes you may have to reach out for support through counseling. So really quick, I'm going to share with you the Employee Assistance and Counseling Center. And so we provide services to employees and members of their immediate household. So your benefit includes 15 sessions within a calendar year. Appointments are confidential. We are a HIPAA compliant agency, and everyone that you're speaking to is a master's level plus therapist. So our core services include traditional counseling, life coaching. We have stress management programs. We offer critical incident stress management services to departments experiencing critical incidents within the workplace. We also offer additional EAP support services. So maybe counseling isn't your thing. Maybe talking to someone does not really speak to you. Hopefully, within our array of services, whether it's art therapy, whether it's yoga, we have a collaboration with Arts and Medicine called Self Care Studio. We offer mental health resources, psychoeducation, and we also have an annual mental health resources fair. So maybe there's something within our gamut of programs and events that can support you into taking care of yourselves as busy health professionals. So to access our services, it's really easy. You're going to go to our website. You're going to complete our intake forms. You're going to schedule time with one of our counselors via a call from our admin team within 3 business days. And then once you meet with your therapist, if you are appropriate for services, then you will schedule a follow-up appointment. And when you go to our website, you'll see a big button that says New Client Forms and Facts, and that is the button where you click to access services. So again, I want to encourage you as healthcare professionals to always take care of yourself. Pay attention to your body signs and symptoms of stress, feeling overwhelmed, and just remember there is support if you need it. Here's our contact information. And again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Tammy. Also, I was wondering if if someone on our call were not UAB employees, is there a place they could go to get, to find kind of general resources, or does your group make referrals to like community-based counseling or anything like that?
So we do have a case manager on our team, and she will make referrals for those persons who aren't eligible for our services. And so I also, Kimberly, can probably send you a general link for additional mental health resources within the community for some of those individuals that have joined us that aren't eligible for our services. Would that be helpful?
That would be wonderful. And then we can
Yeah.
send that out to everybody who RSVP'd. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. Diane Tucker. Diane, I think you might be somehow muted. It doesn't say you're muted, but well, we can, if you want to try to troubleshoot, wonderful tech team that is here. Is there a possibility of you working with Dr. Tucker while we move on to Selam?
Sure, I'll message her directly in the chat.
Thank you so much. Always helpful to have our amazing tech team here. Great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing from Dr. Tucker in a moment. But now we will shift gears and talk to Selam, our poet and author.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you so much, Arts and Medicine, and Tammy and Dr. Tucker for being here today. And this very, very important topic. I'm was very glad to hear that statement from Dr. Long about self-care starts before self-care. The whole idea of caring before we really need it, before the burnout. Self-care starts before the burnout, and that kind of thing. And when you're looking at creating a self-care plan, we are excited to offer art and an artistic practice, or being a part of art as an imaginative skill as part of that self-care practice as well. As I was sitting here, I oftentimes think about, as a longtime artist in residence and artist as well, the many times that I speak with people who may not use art as a creative skill or as a craft or as a profession. And the first thing that oftentimes, I know I've said it before, and I hear people say many times who are in the healthcare field sometimes, is, I'm not an artist. I don't know how to art. I don't know what art is all about. And as I was thinking of that, I'm always reminding people kind of the very, very simple definition of art, which is creative skill and imagination that helps us express ideas and emotions. And a creative skill or imagination that helps us to express ideas or emotion. It doesn't say anything about magnificent Smithsonian, beautiful images, all those things. It's simply, okay, what's in my imagination that's going to help support an idea or a creative skill that's going to evoke some type of emotion. And it doesn't even give us a context towards which emotion that we are to evoke. It's all the emotions to support us in our practice. And that's what art does as a tool to support self-care and also to help with burnout and stress. Some of the things also with art that I wanted to bring up was this this kind of popular word that we hear a lot, mindfulness. As an artist in residence, and I also will talk a little bit more about what my work looks like in action. But one of the things that it looks like in action is to bring forth or evoke some type of support with folks that I'm working with towards mindfulness. And mindfulness, another term that I like to use when I think about mindfulness as a poet and as an artist, is self-awareness. What are you aware of that's happening around you in this moment? And what are you aware of that's happening inside of you at this moment? That's mindfulness. That's it. And that's really helped me, someone who's an overthinker and who's a creative and who wants to go all the way down the rabbit hole towards mindfulness and looking at what those practices may look like. It's simply sitting in the moment and paying attention and being aware towards what's happening with you on the exterior and interior. Being very aware of those spaces. And that's where art, poetry, expressive writing, any type of creative pursuit comes into play. It basically comes around you and it comes inside of you. Around you and inside of you. So it's not something that's a mental or a skill-based talent. It's something that we already can become aware of because this art lives with us and already lives inside of us. So when we look at mindfulness, we think about self-awareness. We think about how do we recognize what's happening with us and how art brings that along. So when I go out and I do a poem, and the first thing that I do is read the poem. And so the poem is now an exterior process to the environment that I'm in. It's out there. It's a living, breathing part of our human experience that we're part of. I read the poem, so it is now in our environment. Then I ask the question, how does this poem make you feel? How did you experience this poem? Which then becomes an interior part of who we are. Out in the environment, we're very aware that in that environment, now this poem lives, mindfulness. Now we're very aware within ourselves what that poem is doing or now beginning to live inside of us, that interior mindfulness, becoming very self-aware. So when I think of self-care, when I think of burnout and looking at ways to reduce burnout, to enhance resilience, to support less stress, and to manage those stress areas in our lives, mindfulness or being very self-aware of your moment that you're in, art can do that for us. Imagine you're at a museum and you're standing in front of this painting. And in that moment, you're looking at this painting. You might not even like the painting. You might not even know who the artist who created the painting is. It may not make any sense to you, but in that moment, you are in that moment aware of that art and that painting. So that's what the self-awareness and the number one first thing towards mindfulness to support burnout and to also kind of give us an opportunity to bring self-care into our world is we stop, we become present, and whatever the art is around us, because it's everywhere around us, right? Whether it's nature, whether we actually go to a physical space where there's art, whether it's refrigerator art from our beautiful children, whether it is something that we're reading, or whether it's a poem that we intentionally go and gather, we become mindful of that art. And how does mindfulness and bringing art into a self-awareness context help reduce stress? Well, the first thing is stops that overthinking bubble. If you're overthinking or thinking an elaborate senses about what could go wrong with the world, right? Or what could go wrong with my work? What could go wrong with my patient? What could go wrong with the systems of the institution that I'm working in? Or you're just overthinking that this is going to be a long day. It's Monday, I have it till Friday, or we have to catch up from last week. All of those things that may be just the beginnings of stress or the even chronic burnout, like Dr. Long was saying in the beginning of no longer finding joy in our work, no longer finding our profession as something that brings us happiness or brings us a sense of satisfaction. One of the things that art does, it allows us to kind of go into that space with mindfulness, and it stops us in that moment to think only about what we are doing. Very popular now is crocheting. I'm sure there's millions of you. I'm sure there are many of you in here who crochet. Many of you can't find time to crochet. Many of you probably used to crochet. Many of you like, I wish I could crochet. Or many of you like, I'm going to buy this little crochet kit. All those things. But imagine the stop and the time that it takes to do that. And sometimes the mindfulness, even when it seems like you aren't thinking about the actual production of what you are creating. And then you look down, you're either watching TV or you could be at a meeting and you look down and it's like, oh, I've done a row. Oh, I've done a square. Oh, I'm almost done with this particular line that I'm doing. And so all of those things happen when we become self-aware and we're in that mindfulness stage. If you do not have an opportunity to actually have something in your hand to do, crocheting, stitching, journaling, all of those things work. Whichever one you pick it. Most of the time people ask, well, which one is better for helping to reduce burnout, helping to enhance my satisfaction, to bring joy? The one that's better is the one that you love. It's the one that you pick up and you find joy in. I find zero joy in crocheting. Even when people try to make me, I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and I've spent all my money on this stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, it's just not me. It's okay, but I find so much joy in other people and talking about it, right? Like I know what I'm talking about. I find so much joy in that, and so much joy in looking at what people have created and sitting next to people who are crocheting and people who are talking about what they're gonna do. That's another part of how art comes into space while we're stressed, or come into space to remind us like, oh, this is something I can do as a precursor, or something I already have in my life as a precursor before the burnout, before the satisfaction starts to kind of dim, or before I start to have kind of a low satisfaction on that tier of how do you find joy in your life. So mindfulness, self-awareness. Another thing what art does, it enhances our confidence. I think I started in the beginning by saying many people I speak with, the first thing they say, I don't do art, especially people who may not be in the field of art, who may be in more scientific-based fields or more analytical-based fields, that may use more cognitive functioning, what have you, or maybe it's just like, this isn't what I do. You know, I haven't had time to go and actually pursue the types of things I would like to do with art museums or nature and those kinds of things. But that's the thing that I love to hear, is when I hear people say, I suck at art, I'm not good at it. And then we bring in art. As an artist in residence, you know, I tell people that my whole life is in my car, and that means markers, crayons, coloring sheets. I know I'm too old for this stuff, right? But all that's, if anyone needs a pair of scissors, if anyone needs a craft, you know, if anyone needs some beads or something to string together, if anyone needs some random yarn, you know, tape and all this something to measure with, I have it in my car, because when you bring all these wonderful things in a space where we are sometimes feeling like a lack of confidence, not just with art, but perhaps sometimes it's hard to admit that we're feeling some of that lack of confidence because of stress or burnout or low satisfaction with our work, or because overwhelmed with our work. What that does is starts to bring back that resilience. It starts to bring back to that fact that, you know, I can just color. And I haven't colored since I was, I don't know, what, 15, 5, 10, whatever. I haven't colored since I colored with my children, you know, and you get the crayons and you get this beautiful pattern and you start coloring, and it's something magic happens to healthcare providers, something magic happens to caregivers, something magic happens to all of our wonderful PhDs and MDs and all those things when we put a crayon and we give a copy of a Mickey Mouse, you know, and we're like, here you go. You know, the confidence rises. But also scientifically, we know that our brain is beginning to remember and to retrain. We're using our digital is great. So a lot of digitized art we use, our AI and all those things are beautiful. But also when we just literally use our hand to write in the journal, our hand to use a crayon, our hand-eye coordination to pay attention to something that we're doing that is creative, other than something as far as a spreadsheet or something that has a deadline or something that has a timeline or something that we know it's going to be really heavy talking to a family. We're coloring, we're remembering. Our memory remembers that excitement from that time when our parent or our kindergarten teacher or our best friend or whomever gave us some smelly markers. The grape one was my favorite. You know, I don't know where y'all were, but gave us some smelly markers, and we were like, oh my gosh. Gave us some glue and a pattern. Gave us some shiny glitter and sparkly, beautiful patterns to play with. Yes, nostalgia. The memory of that helps us gain confidence, brings us back into a satiety of who we are, brings us back into that kind of child, not necessarily careless, but that confidence and that self-awareness of I can create. And that confidence helps with mindfulness, helps us to process emotions. That's why I love poetry so much. I know most people are like, no, I mean, the first thing I do, I mean, I haven't done a lot in the hospital lately, per se, with poetry as far as bedside, but when I'm working with caregivers of healthcare providers, etc., you know, bringing in poetry, I know everyone that I'm talking with may not be a poet, but they have experience with expressing themselves through words. And so as a listening poet, which is someone who simply sits with people, listen to their stories, and then maybe gets an opportunity to craft an original poem, when I'm sitting there, I'm really excited, but at the same time, I see kind of the tendrils kind of processing, opening up this kind of sacred space between two people where we're able to kind of express in vulnerability what's ever happening. And that processing of emotions gives us an opportunity to spark memories, improve focus, because it's come together. We're in this safe space together, in this brave space together. Maybe you have not been able to focus because of your workload, because of pandemic, because of flu, RSV, because all these things are happening right every day. To maybe it's whatever's happening every single day as a healthcare provider, mental health, your own personal mental health, all of the other things that are happening. But this opportunity to sit with someone and do a poem and to listen really gives an opportunity to improve focus. And improving focus has scientifically been proven to help support people in those moments of stress, which could potentially long-term help with burnout. Once we begin to focus and have someone else listen to us as they are focusing on what we are expressing and our emotions that we are beginning to recognize and become self-aware of. And expressing freedom, and then I'll read some poems and be done, but expressing freedom, this is what art does, right? Freedom, this liberation, this whole thing of there is no right, there is no wrong. Art is non-judgmental. I mean, many of you, like I said, may have gone to a museum and saw some art and you're like, what was, I don't get it. Exactly. And other people, you may like, oh my gosh, this is the best piece that I've ever seen. And this is what art is. It allows us to be in the freedom of who we are, kind of let the guard down, let down the professional space that we have been in and had to be in order to function in the world. And then gives us a freedom to create, a freedom to think, a freedom to decide, okay, would I make a sweater today? Or will I make one of those cool hats like that Salome has on, someone crochet for her? Maybe I'll make a scarf, Would I, I don't know, am I going to use the green crayon or do I want sparkly glitter or do I want to talk to Salome about a poem that I remember hearing for the first time when I was in college and I can't forget that poem. So that's the reason why we art. And not just when we need self-care. This is before self-care. Art is kind of the preventive way, one of preventative strategies that we use in our lives to support us to have whole, fulfilled, dynamic lives that we desire to have. It's one of those things that usually is free. Find it anywhere. One of my favorite things growing up to do was getting my mom got lots of magazines in the mail. You remember back in the day, we got lots of magazines in the mail, all of them, from Southern Living to Vogue to Essence to Jet to Ebony to whatever. And for me, I would love those magazines because of the pictures, AKA the art. And until this day, that is one of my self-care remedies, is to go get some magazines from the grocery store or whatever, sometimes the thrift store, and just look at the art in the magazines. And by art, that can be pictures of models, that could be pictures of someone's home or house, can be interior decorating, could be food, could be poetry, could be words, could be anything. And I know when I am feeling low and I'm kind of not on my self-care practices is when I am not looking at magazines or when I'm like, I cannot even open the magazine because I'm feeling a little low. So those are some basic things that we can do. As I end, I'll just like to read you a poem from the work that I do. I started doing this work as a listener poet, artist in residence since 2016 doing creative writing and poetry, but a listener poet during the pandemic. Part of that process was to sit with healthcare providers to remedy ways in which we could support restorative ways for them, but also to look at ways in which we could possibly kind of make sure that burnout was not becoming a mainstay in their lives, and then also to have someone to listen to. So I've done this with so many people at UAB Hospital, but also done this with so many people in the community and also around nationally, and particularly starting with UAB Arts and Medicine with the support of Kimberly and with the support of my artist in residency. So I'll read you one poem and then we will finish up and move to Dr. Tucker. So this poem as I'm reading to you is actually from a project with the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. My favorite people to work with is palliative. So that's just, can someone just give me that to do? Then I'll do that. It's everything. And I'm so glad that I found that. But I'll read you one poem that I did for a palliative professional who was retiring. And as she was retiring, she was a palliative care, she was a director of palliative care. And this particular director of palliative care was at, I'm reading it right now just to make sure, was with the Hospice and Palliative Medicine Academy, and she actually worked for the Academy. And as she was retiring, she was like, I'm just really wondering, did I make a difference? I've been, and so this other second part of burnout comes up when you're almost finished, or you're completed with one assignment, moving into a new assignment, because we aren't finished. Retirement is like assignment completed. Now we're moving into a new assignment, restoring us into that space. And this poem is called Harvest of the Generous. Imagine a pilgrim on a bench, sitting, then disappearing. The sun hiding, wandering behind gracious red cliffs. Imagine you are the pilgrim that no one sees. Your light only remains. Imagine sidewalks that stretch to the sky, lifting your spirit into the air. A pathfinder, finding its wings. Oh, how sweet the harvest of generosity. Oh, how sweet the medicine of the peacemakers. Oh, how sweet the sound of landing with bliss. The spirit of a journeywoman who carries split open oil cans, signifying the healing powers of joy, bearing witness to the solitude of emotional archaeology, restored by the spirit of self, a pathfinder finding its wings. Then a soliloquy from the chasm of poets' dreams. You be well, you hear, you be well, you know you are well, because you have made so many others well. Now you go and be well. Be well, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Selam. That was beautiful. Okay, now I think we have solved the technical challenges, so I will turn it over to Dr. Diane Tucker.
Hey, thank you, Kimberly. And I do apologize for the technical hassles. I'm not in a place that I normally work from. So what we've heard, so everybody, I'd like to just everybody take a deep breath. And one more. Do you feel a little differently? That was about 15 seconds, and it can make a difference. So we've heard two kind of bookends for the concept of self-care. Tammy talked about self-care from the perspective of our roles as healthcare providers and wanting to make sure that we take care of ourselves so that we can really show up in the roles that we have committed to. And that is hugely important. Salim talked about the idea of allowing ourselves to find ways to be expressive, to have an identity that is vibrant and growing, that may be independent or somewhat indirectly related to our professional roles. And both of those things are really, really important. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about what might be kind of in the middle between those things. Okay. And I want to start with recognizing that, you each know yourselves and you have a sense of what for you feels like a release of tension, what feels restorative or rejuvenating. And those are the things that you want to start with. Now, for example, I realize meditation is a wonderful thing. I have looked at the data. I've talked to people. It is not for me. I can't sit and feel better at the end of 20 minutes with my eyes closed, breathing deeply. That does not work for me. Okay. Doesn't mean it doesn't work beautifully for many of my dear friends. So you know what kinds of things work for you. For me, for example, getting some kind of daily exercise is not only good for me, it's good for everyone in my environment because I'm a nicer person. And so a shift that I have worked to make in my thinking has been to go from saying that by carving out time to go work out, to exercise, to run, to whatever I'm doing is selfish versus it's as important in my day as having time to eat. That doing something that ends up resetting and allowing me to feel like I can breathe a little more deeply. I can feel a bit like the tension has been shed. That is as important as any other part of my day. And so one of the things I would encourage is when you decide what things you think are important for you, have part of your planning of a day be when are you going to fit that in? Is it at noon? Is it on the way home from work before you come home and do whatever the evening chores are? What is it for you? Okay, and that has to be your decision. But the thing we've heard from Tammy and from Salim is that you are important. You are worth it. And you can make a commitment to yourself to do the things that are restorative to you. Okay. I'm a big advocate for exercise, partly because, it's been a part of my life, but also I read the literature. I read the research literature. Regular exercise is as effective as psychotherapy or medication in terms of combating depression and anxiety. It helps quality of sleep. Okay. And paradoxically, it improves your level of energy. And, I think that's partly because it releases the tension and you can get to use more of your energy in a constructive way rather than just being, kind of holding it together. So I could do a commercial for that as being a choice, but it really, it needs to be something that works for you. Okay. So take a minute right now and reflect on what is it for you that produces a sense of it may be writing in a journal. It may be going for a walk in the woods. It may be that you're a really social person and you want to go to exercise classes because you get to see people and you get to chat, and that is fun. Does that make sense? Honor who you are. If somebody told me I had to go running on a treadmill in my basement for exercise, I would say in your dreams, that is not me. But does that make sense? Figure out what works for you. So since our time is short, I'm going to move to 2 other topics, just ideas I want to plant that maybe you can elaborate on. One is that we can choose in a conscious way important things about how we frame our day-to-day activities and things in a larger sense. That old, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Well, that is actually profound. Many of us know people who seem to always be able to look on the bright side, and they are sort of mostly floating through. Well, how in the world do you pull that off? And the concept of mindfulness that Salim talked about is a key component. It's the idea of taking a moment to reset and be present, and to feel like you are grounded and you're not overwhelmed by all the things pulling on you. Does that make sense? That's why I asked us to take a couple of deep breaths before I started talking. Okay? It's to let you kind of come back to a thoughtful way of being in this moment. Okay? And I got a challenge when I was trying to get on this call because I had the technical challenges you saw and then a whole bunch before that. And I just needed to. Just a couple days ago, a friend told me about an app she's been using, and she's been using it for a while, but she had just restarted, and it's a mindfulness chime. It chimes, I set it up to chime randomly once an hour. So I'll get this little chime in my ears, and what I do is it takes about 5 seconds. And just in the last couple days, so whatever I'm doing, I just stop. And it's so nice. It means that I can choose how I'm experiencing that moment. And it gives me enough of a pause that becomes a conscious choice. And so if I'm feeling hurried and busy, and instead I could say, oh, I get to talk about something I'm really interested in just a few minutes, and I'm going to figure this out. Does that make sense? So looking for things like that, or things that would be helpful to you in bringing yourself to a way of experiencing the things that are going on in a way that they are not a source of tension and pressure and misery and oh my God, and oh, but to say, oh my gosh, look what I get to do. I am in a role, as Salim said, she loves working with palliative care folks. And there's some really hard things about that, because we can't fix it, but it is a privilege. And so if you choose to focus on the privilege and on what the difference you can make, rather than, how hard it is, that's a choice. Okay. And I have no illusions about how difficult it is to actually make that a consistent practice. The best most of us can do is to periodically pull ourselves back and take a look at what are we doing cognitively with the part of our life we're in. Okay. Now, a place you can make an important choice is the energy you put into the environment where you work. We don't get to choose most of the time our coworkers. We don't get to choose our bosses. We don't get to choose a lot of things. But we spend a fair amount of time with those folks and in that environment. And we can at least choose to be the kind of person we would want to be interacting with, and to put good energy into that environment. In addition, part of self-care is realizing that connections with others are important. And, you're not going to be best friends with everybody you work with, but there may well be 1 or 2, maybe 3 people that you genuinely are, intrigued with, feel a potential for closeness, feel like there could be, they could be somebody when they say, how are you doing? You could actually say, this is a tough day. Without, you could be honest. Okay. And if there are those relationships, foster them, in a way that makes your workplace a place that is more welcoming. Okay. So how are we for time? So I want to make just one short comment, again, kind of a bridging between Tammy and Salim. I'm somebody who grew up with a mother who was an artist, totally intimidated me. I thought, I can't do anything about that. I've always loved art. And through a couple of events, I got intrigued about 12 years ago, 10 years ago. And I got up the courage to take an art class at UAB. I signed up, me and all the freshmen. And I was terrible. It was so hard. And it taught me a couple things. One is, it wasn't my day job, right? So I could try something new. It wasn't my day job. I didn't have to be excellent. I could treat it with a sense of humor. But I could allow myself to explore. And it doesn't have to be in art, it can be in anything. That if you allow yourself to not be good or excellent, and just to be trying it out, to be experimenting, it can, it's very freeing. Does that make sense? And so that idea of allowing yourself to explore potential other identities is a way to, kind of honor yourself. Okay. Questions, comments? I kind of skipped over, I went little smidgens of ideas, but.
I don't think we have any questions in the chat, but this has been, I love being able to hear 3 different but connected viewpoints of this. And I just, and I'm gonna say one thing, and then I want to leave it with a final thought from each of you. But meditation also is intimidating to me. But I have found that if I have a few moments and I can go outside, like take a break, I'm often sitting at a desk, which, is not great for my personal well-being. So I'll go outside and I just think about my senses, like, what can I hear? Just take a moment. What am I hearing? What can I feel? Maybe pick up a leaf or rub your hand in the grass or the concrete. But yeah, and smells, just engaging all your senses in outside, especially. I mean, you could do it in your room too, but I just find that also is helpful for me, and it's a very easy thing to do without feeling overwhelming, like Diane was saying about meditation. So that's just my own personal 5 cents. But I appreciate everyone being here today. And I just want to close with, if we could hear like just a final thought from each of our 3 presenters. And I'll start with Tammy.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for being here. Thank you, those who showed up here. So Kimberly did ask me the question, how do you tap into mental health resources? I did put a link to some of our virtual mental health resources that are available on our webpage, but also we are an EAP, and a lot of providers or a lot of organizations have their own employee assistance program, or they may have some mental health resources available through their insurance provider. And so that's always a good place to start, but there are a lot of local nonprofits as well. And what do I want to leave you with today outside of sharing those resources and telling you to look within? Just take the time to do something for yourself. I do know, as a mom myself, as a wife, as a mental health support person, that I'm usually the last person to do something for me every week. And we have to be intentional about doing something for ourselves. And yes, I feel guilty when I leave my boys at home and I go do a little something for myself, but their dad's there. He will take care of them. So again, just encouraging you to make sure that you're looking out for your own well-being, and it's okay for you to be selfish about your own self-care.
Selam. Thank you,
Yes.
Tammy.
Yes. Thank you all so much. I'll just read one line from a poem, Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese. Many of you may know, but the last line states, "Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things." Thank you.
Thank you, Selam. Beautiful. And Dr. Tucker.
Well, thank you. Tammy, you stole my idea. But I think it's worth reiterating that when you are in a helping profession, the idea is that you're giving all the time, and that there's that's important. But nobody is going to step up and set limits and help you take care of yourself but you. And it is important to learn to, sometimes say no, to say, I'm going to do whatever it is that is healing for you. Maybe it be I need a half an hour to be by myself and I'm going to write in my journal. Whatever it is, you are worth it. And it doesn't work very well to hope that other people in your environment are going to say, now, Kimberly, you really need to go take some time for yourself. No, they'd rather you fix dinner and hung out and entertained them, but you are responsible for taking care of yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Tammy Long, Selam Green, and Dr. Diane Tucker. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Next month, we've got Cheryl Ackerson Dodson, who was featured on the S-Town podcast. She is now really focused her life on suicide prevention. And so she's going to be talking with us about, if you're familiar with that podcast, the legacy of the person that is featured there and how she's dedicating her life to his legacy. So thank you so much. And again, thank you to all our wonderful speakers. Everyone, get some self-care. Thank you.
Bye-bye, y'all.